Hi, I'm Bob Dixon. Welcome to the Leader's Edge Hot Takes edition of the Five Eagles Insight Podcast. For over 3 decades, I served in the military as an engineer and as a strategist, and I learned a few things about leadership. We know that it goes beyond theory. It's about real-world application. So in this series, sponsored by Five Eagles Leadership, we feature industry leaders and share their leadership journeys with you. My mission's simple. It's to help you become the best leader you can be. Now, if that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to be considered as a guest in upcoming episodes, please go to 5eaglesleadership.com/interview and apply today. Now, let's get started.
Hi, welcome back to the Leader's Edge podcast. Today's guest is Steve Kochan from HaulPay. He's out of Long Beach, California. It's a fintech platform for freight and logistics, and it's kind of unique. Steve, thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on, Bob.
Well, listen, can you give us an overview of what is HaulPay and why should people care?
Yeah, absolutely. So HaulPay is a financial platform for the freight and logistics industry. And mostly what we focus on is helping to basically finance small and mid-sized freight companies, but doing that without loading them up with a bunch of debt that typically will burden their business. And then kind of the delivery mechanism for that financing is a piece of software that it can also integrate with their other forms of business and transportation software that kind of makes their back office and their day-to-day lives easier. So 90% plus of the trucking and logistics companies in the United States are small, mid-sized companies. And that fragmentation is actually even growing, to the surprise of many analysts. So to kind of give those smaller and mid-sized companies a kind of a fighting chance and the ability to even build on that and thrive, that software really adds that extra efficiency and capability to their businesses, and then the financing without having to get loaded up with a bunch of debt, because we do a unique way of doing our factoring and funding for these type of companies, is extremely beneficial, and we're accelerating that go-to-market to that end.
Okay, there's a lot there that you just said.
There's a lot in the software, yeah.
Yeah, I want to pack some of that. So the financing piece of that is very interesting. As a serial entrepreneur and the starter of 3 businesses. Actually, I think we could really count it as 2 businesses and then acquired another one. But the financing piece is always really a struggle, particularly for startups. So if you've got an interesting way of helping transportation startups get funding without amassing a bunch of debt, that's worth the conversation alone. If you're out there listening and you're in the transportation industry, you're thinking, oh, yeah. I need that. You got to give Steve a call here. That's fascinating. The other piece was really interesting, I think, is the replicating the back office sort of thing, right? It sounds like your software is residing within the transportation software, but doing some of the analytics that would normally take a crew of
that's
people.
a good quick analysis. So we have our own app that you can use, and then if you have an existing piece of transportation software, they're typically called a TMS. It's like the ERP for transportation companies. So it's like an ERP specifically kind of in that vertical. We can also be integrated into that experience, so it's just kind of a seamless experience to get your financing, process payments, and we do things like, for example, for back office, for example, like you mentioned, setting credit terms, managing credit risk. I kind of act as a shield, and the software kind of gives you insights as you're about to work with a prospective customer, you currently are, as to, hey, does HaulPay approve them? Does HaulPay have any insights delivered to me on them? So we reveal a lot of that profile information and our credit approval statuses as well to our customers who are using our platform.
That is really cool, and particularly as small businesses, particularly startups, have a challenge in building a team because people are expensive. if you have a software solution. I coach a lot of my clients. They say, listen, if you can automate, outsource, or delegate something, then you're going to free up your time to start doing strategic stuff. I love the idea of automating a lot of those things. I keep
trying to remind myself that too every day.
we all do it, and I can coach that all day long, and then I find myself doing all sorts of stuff that I shouldn't be. So you mentioned the fragmentation in the industry, and I think that's really interesting because we're at a time when a lot of we'd call maybe legacy industry, something that's not high tech, is going through a lot of consolidation. I mean, you see it particularly in residential construction and services, that the PE firms out there. Yeah. The PE firms are buying every HVAC they can get their fingers on.
Yeah.
But you're saying that's not really happening in the transportation industry.
Well, so I think it's happening all at the very top. So there's bigger deals, and what's happening is there was a lot of layoffs in transportation specifically because transportation and logistics went through this crazy boom in back end of 2020 through all of 2021, and then kind of the first quarter of 2022, and then it turned. And then because what had happened is the supply chain had kind of had the shock from the pandemic and a lot of the international supply chain slowing down. So everybody overstocked the shippers and all these distribution centers. Walmart, right? If you want to, Amazon, they overstocked everything over here. And then they didn't really need to ship as much on the ground in the US. So there's kind of this arc where everything boomed, and then it's been this really aggressive kind of recycling and just coming back to baseline, so to speak, for the freight market. So because of that, some of the biggest companies have laid off people or have let go of certain salespeople or even operations people. Well, they have customer relationships, and then they go out and they start their own businesses. That's where a lot of fragmentation is coming from. The larger companies, they're kind of becoming more efficient and they're consolidating at the top, but then they're letting go of people who are going out on their own and starting their own businesses, oftentimes with a lot of experience at some of the top freight companies in the U.S. So it's an interesting market. It's a little bit different than some of the other industries, and then the freight market's just kind of coming out of one of the worst recessions it's had in 20 years.
Wow, that's hard to see from the outside if you're not in the transportation industry.
It's an industry-specific recession. Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah,
that's fascinating, and I don't know why we don't see the effects of that bouncing into other industries, because transportation affects everything.
It does. If you look carefully, you'll see things like banks, publishing. They're all vertical and kind of niche media journals and stuff like that, but where they'll say like, hey, we've had to take all these losses and write-offs for equipment financing for trucks lately because a lot of guys bought trucks during the boom and now they're not making the payments anymore. So you'll see stuff like that where you'll kind of see these clear indications, things tied back to that industry. But yeah, you don't hear it in your day-to-day. You know, there's just a lot of oversupply, I guess. So it's not going to affect the supply chain's ability to operate. It's just going to affect the people who are in that servicing that industry. That there's, you know what I mean? There's just too many people trying to do it.
But when we exhaust those existing supplies, then we're going to have the same problem that we had
then it'll
4 years ago.
Then you're not going to have enough drivers again, right?
That's right.
Exactly. So it's like a whiplash effect, and we're just kind of coming back around the whiplash right now.
Well, it sounds like you position yourself in a pretty interesting niche within that industry. How'd you get into the idea of selling fintech to this niche industry?
Yeah, so I mean, I started my career after college. I had actually had a few small businesses in college doing race car stuff because that was one of my hobbies for a while, and track days. And then I started tuning people's cars. That kind of got me interested in software. And then I was going to go to grad school and probably do an MBA. I was also really interested in international affairs. But this was 2008, right? This is during the financial crisis. And I was watching friends who were a few years older than me, have MBAs from good schools. They couldn't get a job. So I was like, this is really interesting. I started rethinking that. I didn't have a lot of student loan debt. But I was about to get a lot of student loan debt with that next degree. So a friend of mine said, hey, come work at C.H. Robinson. It's a big Fortune freight brokerage. They just bought another company nearby, and they were in the transition of acquiring that company. So I kind of got thrown right into the fire at like one of the top companies in the middle of an acquisition of a smaller freight company. So I just learned a lot about the freight industry really quickly. And then I worked there for a few years. They say in supply chain it picks you. It's not the other way around. It's like you don't really go out there like I want to be in supply chain, and then you end up doing it. You love it. Like I like big complex systems, and I'm pretty patriotic, and it's something that affects all of us here, especially in the U.S. from the supply chain side. So eventually, I went to work for a customer. While I was working there, he was a much smaller freight company, and you could see the vast difference in resources, technology, finance. So eventually, a few years later, I started dabbling around with building websites, and that eventually would lead to a software startup for the freight industry. And then eventually I would pivot into fintech after talking to our users, which were all smaller, mid-sized freight companies, and saying, hey, what other challenges do you have other than just trying to digitize some of your processes? And that's when we started hearing about, hey, to finance our business, we have to take these really expensive loans, or there's predatory lenders, or the existing financing options are just really bad. And that's kind of when the light bulb went off. And that was about 2017.
That's awesome. Now, are you doing this all on your own? Do you have a team around you?
No, we have a team. We just recently last year merged with another finance company that does equipment finance for the trucking industry, and we're a division of that company now. And I've got a team of about, I think we're 21 here in the U.S. for the haul pay specific team, and I run that team. And then we have some nearshore resources. So it's a small team. I probably have right now about 3 or 4, I think 4 direct reports as of now. We're very efficient. I think of us as like the special ops of the business world because we're very specialized. We're trying to do a very high profit business, very automated software. We build software. I mean, if you think about it, we are the hammer that thinks everything is a nail because we if we see a problem, we try to build an internal tool, or can we take something from another software and apply that to the problem. But that makes us really efficient, and it makes us able to very, very profitable over time, especially with the finance industry being the way that it is.
Now, did you have leadership experience before you built your company and started hiring people?
I've always been interested in leadership. I was a big airplane nerd growing up, and you spent a lot of times going to air shows and Air Force bases, and was really interested in going to the military for a long time. I did a lot of leadership training through the Air Force Auxiliary Civil Air Patrol from the age of like 13 through 18 or 19. I think it was a big part of it. Leadership has been something that's been pretty common in my family background from both the military, and I think my father was also a fire chief, and so there's a lot of people in LA. It's thousands and thousands of people you end up managing, right? So it was kind of just something that I think I'm naturally attuned to. And then the business part came in, and I feel like there's always more stuff you can learn from the leadership side because no one's a perfect leader, right? There's always things that you can learn, and a lot of times the only way you really internalize it is going through a crisis or going through something where you have to test those skills, whether they be innate or learned. But that's kind of where I think the kernel came from, and the rest was just operating and figuring it out from there.
Well, there's a lot to be said for just doing it, right? And we talk about a skill acquisition model of 70-30 or 70-20-10. That 10% is some book learning or lecture, being taught something, and 20% is feedback loop. So it's 70% is just doing it. And if you're just doing it without a feedback loop or without training, then you're getting about 70% of where you should be. But if you have that experience and that training that you get from Civil Air Patrol from different places in your life, you're already well ahead of the game. You got that 10%. But then there's the question: are you getting the right feedback within your organization? Right?
Yeah, it's like I had this sense like of consciously of like, I kind of know I need to step up and do this now. Like, so that kernel was already there from some of that training. But the rest was like, all right, like for example, like I was never someone to journal or keep a diary, but a few years ago I started keeping a journal, and I only use it maybe once a month just to kind of like, all right, I should do that, just summarize everything that really stands out. So, and it's not even that I can barely read my handwriting, right? But I can at least, it's the act of doing it that kind of solidifies the lesson, in your brain.
Yeah, I do believe that writing brings clarity, and it's one of those things that's really difficult for a lot of us to do. But when we do put the pen to paper and you start to go, okay, I have to think clearly about this because it seems like it's really clear in my head, and then when I try to explain it on paper, it's not as
It's a
clear.
great point. Yeah. Yeah. And then you really have to figure out like, what am I trying to write down? What really matters?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, who are your ideal clients? Who is going to sign up for HallPay?
Yeah, so most of the time, I kind of our ideal customer persona would be, small trucking fleets, and usually we try to aim for like 3 to 25 truck fleets. We will work with owner operators, so just one truck owner operators. Kind of prefer to be in that 3 to 25 truck fleet trucking company range, and then we also do a lot of same services and technologies available to freight brokers, which is a little bit different freight industry. They don't have trucks. They're kind of the intermediary between the guys with the trucks and the companies that have the freight to move. And for freight brokers, they're anything from startup all the way to 100 plus people in a team, but still kind of that small to mid-sized business range is really what we target for the freight industry.
So when somebody signs up with you, what is kind of their experience that they go through, and like how do you change how they do business?
Yeah. So we're not the way we operate is we're basically going to finance your cash flow. We're going to do it without being a loan to you. So we don't actually even check your credit. It's not it's not a business line of credit or loan either that is underwritten to include you as a personal guarantor. So it's pretty cool. So we're really just looking at are you a upstanding person in your community? Do you have any history of financial crime? Something we do check, right? And are you, where are you at with your business journey, right? Like, have you been doing this for a while? Like, is it stable? Are you just starting out? There's a few other indicators, but it's a pretty painless process. And then within usually a matter of days or weeks, depending on if you have an existing loan that we have to make sure that they know about us, because other lenders need to know if we're doing any kind of financing for you in most cases. You're approved on the platform, and at that point, you can go from waiting maybe 30 days or 60 days for your payments from your customers to getting those the same day, right? Within a day or two. We also take on the invoicing service. This is really an innovation on something called invoice factoring, which is one of the oldest forms of trade finance. We just do it in a different way than the rest of the market does it from the risk side. And then you've got all the benefits of like, hey, should I do business with this other company? Because I'm not sure, and I don't have a credit team. Like I had at C.H. Robinson, we had 100 analysts in Chicago, just doing credit analysis for all the different branches in this big freight brokerage of should you extend credit to this new customer. So we've leveraged and turned those formulas that I developed on my own, separate from Robinson, in a way that you kind of have that at your disposal, and you can rest easy that you're not going to wake up one day and realize I just extended 100 grand and now I'm never going to get paid, and that's the end of the company, right? That's a huge. I would want that for me as a small business owner, and we're using technology to deliver that to others now.
So it sounds like there's a whole lot more stability if someone's using HallPay rather than if they're trying to just do it all on their own.
Yeah, I mean, you could subscribe to different credit agency platforms, and you can kind of try to pull all that data, and you can try to make your own decision. And it's 50% of the time you'll probably be right, and maybe 25% you'll be close enough, and the other 25% you only need 5% of $1 million portfolio to go bad if you're a small business, and that could wipe you out, right? So. It's something that you can't. I think it's really hard to do without having software built to do this, and we're trying to do it in the most cost-effective way possible, so that it's something you can just build into your cost structure. It's becomes a part of your day-to-day operation that's very easy and short. It doesn't take a lot of time, and you get all the benefits of being able to sleep better at night.
That's awesome. Where do you see the industry going in the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's going to be, just like any other industry, there's going to continue to be a trend of like back office is the way we think about it, but a process of repetitive task automation. That's just where we're at. That's these large language models, aka AI, and some of these new technologies that are finally hitting their stride in the mainstream market are going to continue to propagate. And there'll be different shapes that we'll take, but we'll definitely continue to see that a lot more automation and repetitive, mundane tasks, I think, especially in transportation, where there's a lot of like document exchange and a lot of stuff that's contingent on information being kind of extracted from a piece of paper and then communicated online. That's very common for shipping, if you could imagine that. And a lot for a lot of other industries too, right? So I think the fragmentation aspect of the transportation industry specifically will kind of stabilize, and we probably will see some more horizontal consolidation rather than we've seen it all kind of at the top. But you'll just see bigger, like mid-sized players getting more and more robust, and that middle of the strata growing, which is what we want to see, frankly, over here too, which is where we're kind of tracking towards where the market's going. So that's exciting. With the right technology stack and a little bit of experience, it's a real business that can make real life-changing cash flows for a small business owner if they're coming from logistics, especially veterans, who've had experience or understand logistics. It kind of fits nicely with a lot of their background. So we see a lot of veteran-run businesses in our industry, and it can be a pretty meaningful, life-changing business without a whole lot of investment. So we're trying to make that more possible and help that mid-market continue to grow, and I think that will continue into the future.
Awesome. Do you find your clients mostly in California, or are you working all the way across the country?
So we have customers now in at least, I think, 2 in every state. Every one of the 48 can deliver 48 now. So we definitely have some concentration in the bigger freight states, if you want to think about it that way. California, Texas, lots of ports of entry on both of those states, right? Especially in the Gulf for Texas, on the border for Texas. California, obviously, big port of LA/Long Beach. Put them together, it's the 3rd largest port in the world. And then we've got some concentration out of, I think, like Edison, New Jersey, another big port. Yep. You're just going to see this kind of heat map almost kind of form as you start to get into the market more. But we do have clients who are domiciled in every state in the country, and we can work with anybody in any state in the country. So that's also pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. So most people have learned more from their failures than they have from their successes. I'm betting that you've got some things that you've learned the hard way. You want to share any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm already, I'm running this business. I've got a pretty healthy coupon for more future liquidity. I'm already thinking about building another company. It's just how I realize this is who I am now. So, and some of that comes with some pretty difficult lessons, right? I think one of the most obvious ones for me, especially, so I was a sole founder for the most part. I didn't have co-founders. I had some good advisors. I had some good friends along the way, kind of helped me with things and were contractors for certain things early on. But I had to really, if there was a crisis, I couldn't go and be like, hey, John or Bob or whatever, hey, let's talk about this. Let's be in you. Let's go out and let's go for a walk. Let's figure this out. It's really it was kind of locked up in my head. So I think one of the biggest lessons I learned from that was, network early and often, and try to start thinking about always having a kind of a inventory. I guess maybe that's not the right word, but you just have a network of people that have strong traits that also complement yours, so that as you start to build an organization or a business, it's not such a crisis where you're scrambling, you're kind of overwhelmed. You can't start to bring people into the management team or build out that side to get you the help where you need it most. So I think that's probably the biggest lesson I learned, that next time around, I'm already networking even here today, right? I'm trying to be more receptive to these types of opportunities, so that that kind of that draft picking process is a lot more efficient for the A team as you build out the next one.
Yeah, I would agree with that as lessons. I started a company from scratch by myself, and I went through the exact same struggles that you're talking about of, okay, something just went wrong. Who do I talk to? And I'm looking around going, I guess I got to go look in the mirror and ask myself some hard questions. the second company that I started. I co-founded it with a good friend and a really smart guy, and then we just started bolting on people who were smarter than us. And
Yeah,
we
yeah,
recently
it's subconscious sometimes. You don't even realize it, right? Yeah,
we recently went through a crisis, and looking up at the team around us, we're like, we've got the right people in the room.
that's fantastic.
And that was so reassuring that we knew we were going to weather this. And then when we came out of the backside of it, we were like, okay, that was a good exercise for us to see if we could go through a crisis and not kill each other. So
I'd add one more part to that, which is like, don't be afraid to make the changes that are kind of festering in your mind faster, right? That's another thing I learned. It's like, man, I just really don't think this person is the right person. Like, well, just make the change. I mean, it's going to be better for everybody, because then it's going to be 9 months down the road. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how I know that I'm onto something and I should trust that instinct. And maybe I'm jumping the gun, but that's another one. It's like sometimes I've ended up, 9 months. I'm a pretty nice guy too. So 9 months or a year later, and you're like, yeah, we should have made this change when I first was really feeling that feeling,
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, an untreated wound often gets infected, and it's not going to get better on its own. So,
for sure,
dealing 100%. With it when you as soon as you realize it's a wound, it's difficult. And I would say that one of the leadership lessons I learned the hard way was if you're not willing to get rid of somebody who needs to go, you probably shouldn't be in that leadership role. Yeah. I would also say that if you enjoy getting rid of people, if you like firing people, you also do not deserve to be in that leadership role.
Yeah, you need to make an investment in your people sometime. It's just figuring out the trade-off between investing in people and sometimes even loyalty, depending on how competitive your market is, and not having the mettle to actually operate as a leader. So you got to be honest with yourself.
Absolutely. And so what's the next big thing for you? Where is this all going?
Well, I'm going to keep building HallPay. We've got a couple new products that we'll be launching next year, all kind of wrapping around that payments and risk and finance piece for transportation. And I've been advising a couple other fintechs, one out of Austin and another one here in Southern California, just a little bit of time every week, which is helping me kind of keep my, ear to the ground, make sure, I'm learning from it. They're learning from my experiences. So it's great exchange, and we're friends now. So that's pretty much it. Keep building, keep trying to learn more as a leader, and apply it and continue to build the business.
Well, it sounds like you're on the right track, Steve. I think this is going to be very fruitful. I know it's been good for you so far, but I know you got big dreams for other things that you're going to do with your life and take those skills to market. I love it. So tell me, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Yeah, I think the best way is if you guys are on LinkedIn, you want to contact me, just shoot me a message on LinkedIn. My email's pretty hermetically sealed for B2B contact with certain opportunities I'm working on. But if you want to reach out, you can reach out on LinkedIn if you have a profile there. I do have a Twitter, and maybe I could give you that after this, Bob, and you can link to it if you want.
Sure, absolutely.
On getting my personal brand out there a bit more. But yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best if you do want to reach out. And if you are interested in HallPay, or you happen to be in transportation or know someone who's transportation, just Google HallPay, HAUL Pay. And the website is hallpay.io.
That's great. I think there's a lot of people that can benefit. If you're in the transportation industry, you need to give Steve a call, link up with him on LinkedIn, or go to his website. There is a fantastic opportunity, particularly if you are a small business owner in the transportation industry. Our guest today has been Steve Kochan from HallPay out of California. Steve, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks a lot, Bob. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Leader's Edge Hot Take Series. I hope you found today's insight meaningful, valuable, and that you're ready to put them into action. Now, if you enjoyed the episode and want to keep improving your leaderships, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. I post new content every week, packed with strategies, tips, and real-life examples to help you lead with impact. Now remember, great leadership isn't just about guiding others, it's about continuously growing yourself. If you'd like to be considered as a guest for upcoming episodes, please go to 5eaglesleadership.com/interview to apply today. Keep pushing, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next episode. Be awesome.